have these beautiful trees that we're going to do today. So welcome, thank you for coming. So you'll want some paper towel if you've got it handy. I use this sometimes to tap off excess paints on my artwork. Sometimes I use it just to tap my brushes off, but it's just good to have something. I don't find Kleenex works quite as good as paper towel, but if you don't have paper towel, sometimes some people use a rag or even a block of a toilet roll. So that could be an option for you as well. So you'd only have to use one because it absorbs and then it dries and then it absorbs and then it dries and it'll stay together for a long, long time. So you'll also want a couple of containers of water. So I just have some big buckets here and of course paints, whatever colors that you'll need. Lots of green in this picture and brushes anywhere from a 0 to a 6 to a 9. I have a 5, I have a 4, I have a 3. If you have a 1, you might want to do some fine, getting into some fine crevices or corners. So, and I just use a pointed brush for most of my artwork. So we're just going to get into art mode. So I like to take some deep breaths just to calm everything down, just to get into the spirit of what it is I'm trying to do for the next hour. You're giving yourself this gift of time. So give yourself the gift of really focusing on where we are today. So let's just take one deep breath in. And as we take that deep breath in, we'll just hold it momentarily, and when we release, we're just really going to drop down those shoulders. So you'll feel them actually drop down. So first deep breath in and hold it and find something you like in the room and smile and release. Our second deep breath in and hold it. And smile, lots to do in a second or two, and release. And our third deep breath in, and hold it for a moment and smile, find something in the room that you like, and release. Really drop those shoulders down. And if you need to, we hold a lot of tension here, so give yourself, just give yourself a massage, and it should work well. Let's get on to our art. So I'm going to turn my camera around the other way so you will see the drawing. But we have these trees, we have the forest. We're not going to paint the top of the cabin in the woods, but we are going to paint around it. So I'm going to start with a darker green. I'm going to get right into colors, and I'm doing wet on dry. So I'm not doing any wetting of the canvas. I'm putting wet paint on a dry canvas. This is a 9x12 piece of paper. Please remember, it's just a piece of paper, not to get too stressed about perfection. As I said, if you want to try it again, you'll be able to get access to the recording. But I'm going to start with this big tree here in the background above my cabin. So I'm going to do the bottom line right along the roof line, trying to keep as straight as I can as it is a roof line. And this is with Hooker's green. So it's fairly dark. So just have fun with this. Let's just have fun with this picture in the forest. And I'm just going to paint those ridges of the tree coming up. And if you find at any time you're starting to stress, oh no, I'm not keeping up. Oh, if you need me to slow down, open up your mic and ask me, and I'm quite accommodating with that. I understand that people paint at different paces. So then I'm just going to join those lines. So there's lots of details in this picture, but it's not too overwhelming. And this one ends behind that tree, so I'll just fill in that little spot. So you can see it actually goes beyond, so it's behind the other tree. So this picture has 3 different dimensions. It has the background, it has the foreground, and it has immediate. This is my spot where I'm seeing it from because this will be the closest. So with my Hooker's green, because I want a nice dark tree above that cottage or cabin, I'm just going to fill it in with that Hooker's green. Just trying to keep it a nice, dark, even color all the way through. If it starts to lighten up, because I've got a little more water, I'm just going to add a little extra paint. And it doesn't have to be, because trees in the forest aren't all exactly the same color all the way through. If it's lighter or darker in spots, that's okay too. You can see I've got some lighter spots, I've got some dark spots. That's all right. Now there is a second tree that is dark like that, and we'll go ahead and we'll paint that tree as well. Same color, Hooker's green. So same color, Hooker green, that's this tree. And again, I'm just going to go through and paint my edges first, the top angles. And this tree is going to disappear behind another tree, so it won't be complete on the bottom either. So it's going to disappear behind that other tree. And so I'll join my angles. And I can take that right down to the bottom, right down into that V and come back up again. And I want to leave that little tree in front of it. So it's a little bit of negative painting in this as well. So still continuing to fill this tree in. And as I said, if I get too light, I don't just want the outer edges looking dark like it's an outline. I want the whole tree fairly dark, so I'll just add more paint rather than more water. And the boughs on the tree don't have to be completely even in size and shape. If some are thicker, heavier, a little bit deeper, that's okay.
Proceed.
And if you have your mic open, if you're able to mute, just in case you get a phone call or some personal conversation, please go ahead and mute your microphone. And as I said, I'm just going to just try to even up some of it. It doesn't matter if it's perfect all the way through. So let's move back to our cabin. And I'm using red. You can use cadmium red, something nice and bright. So I'm going to paint the front of my cabin and the side wall. So I'm just going to outline it first, going around my windows up to my roof line. down the other side. So it's just the front of the cabin that I want to paint first. Just going around that door and around the other window. So then I know what not to paint. I'm going to paint all inside, leaving the windows and the door just in a bright red. Our watercolor dries 20 to 30% lighter from when you put it on. So it may lighten up a little, and we may want to come back and darken that up. And it also is a cabin in the woods. So if there are some lines in your painting, some lines, markings, that's okay. Don't worry on that. It is a cabin in the woods. So we want it to maybe be a little bit rustic looking. And I'm also going to do the parts at the side that are showing. This is my side wall. So that's quite a deep looking roof. And I've got a little bit on the outside edge as well. So that's all I'm going to paint for my cabin for now. So I'm moving away from trees that are wet and my cabin that's wet. I want to paint another tree where painting that tree won't cause any other paint to run. So I have a stick tree, quite a narrow tree in the center, and I'm using ochre. So that's this tree that just comes down just to my center. So I'm just using ochre coming down. And I'm just, wherever I've penciled those little lines, it's kind of a stick tree, a little bit of a Charlie Brown tree, but very tall. And I'm just giving it some nice bright ochre where those lines are. And again, I like to move around my canvas from wet spot to dry spots so that I'm not interfering. So I'm going to take my hooker green. I'm going to add a little bit of water, just lighten it a little bit. And I'm going to add a touch of blue. So I'm using a little bit of cobalt blue. I'm going to paint this tree as a blue spruce. So it's a little bit of green and a little bit of blue and a little bit of water, just to thin it out, just so it looks a little bit different than the other trees. So it's kind of a bluey green. And I can do the same thing, come down, do my edges. And if I want to make that tree bigger than what I've drawn, a perfect opportunity to do that. It's entirely up to you. If it's not the shape that you like, you can adjust it. This tree is sitting on top of a a snow hill. So we're going to take it right down to the bottom. This is the hill. We're going to fill in all those spots. So it's kind of a bluey green. And if you miss some spots or you have some little white places in the center, that's okay too. It doesn't have to be completely filled in. We will have white left in this picture, which will be quite visible and eye appealing. But if you want to leave a little bit of white in your tree there as well, that's okay. And if you find when you're painting, you're getting stressed again, remember, deep breath in, drop your shoulders and let that breath out. It helps to relieve any excess tension. Just now moving away from anywhere that I've got wet paint because I don't want it to run. So I'm going to move to this little star on
Cathy,
top of the tree. Yes.
can you just slow down just a little bit?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. Yep. Yep. So we have hooker green on these two trees, a mixture of hooker green and cobalt blue for this blue spruce. We have ochre for this one tree in the center, and red. So if you are at this point and you want to touch up the front of your cabin with fresh red, this is an opportunity to do that. As we know, watercolor dries 20 to 30% lighter from when you put it on. If you're happy with what you've got already on your cabin, that's good. You don't need to touch it up. And now with bright yellow, let's do this little star that's at the roof of our cabin. Just the star on top of the tree. So the first tree that we did above the cabin was in hooker's green. Now we're going to work on this tree right beside it. So I'm mixing hooker's green and yellow. I want an olivey green color. So I want it to look different than this tree, a little bit lighter, and we'll do some little embellishments on it once it's dry. So I'm mixing, again, hooker's green. So I'm sticking with the same green and the yellow that we just did for our star. And I'm going to paint this tree. So you can see it's quite a bit different. Hooker's green and yellow. It's an olivey color. And it's not a straight tree, it's an evergreen, got a little bit of a bend in it. That's okay. Just trying to steer clear from some of that red. We are going to put some embellishments on this tree just to change it up a little bit with some highs and lows, but that's once it dries. So if your colors are lighter or darker in different spots, so mine is a little bit light on the bottom, I've got a little bit dark, maybe a little patch in the center, and at one point I veered off my line, so I've got a little bit of a side join, a little bit of an add-on to the side of my tree. I'll be able to cover that up by the embellishments once we move on, once we get a little farther on and once that paint dries. So I'm just going to leave that alone and we'll fiddle with that one later. The next tree we're going to work on is this center tree. This center tree that has some white spots in it and some green. So I'm looking for the same green that I just put on the little tree. It's sort of an olivey color, but I might add just a little bit more yellow. So I'm looking for a little bit more olivey. So still the same Hooker's green and yellow, but just a touch of extra yellow added. So this is a little bit of a tricky tree to do. There are white gaps in the tree. So I'm not going to paint the whole tree. I'm only painting the little carved out sections, leaving white in between. It's perfectly acceptable to leave white on a watercolor. When you're doing acrylics, you paint white. In watercolor, you leave white. So you see there's little gaps in there in between. So this might take a few extra minutes because there's extra little panels. You want to be sure you're getting all of the details of the tree and leaving that white. And when I come to that little triangle globe-shaped tree, I'm going to paint the green on one side, leaving that triangle and painting the extra little spot on the other side. So each part of that globe tree, the side, it stays I'm just going around that angle. And in between stays white. So just by painting around it, my little globe tree starts to materialize. Now we've got these cone trees. There's 3 of them. There's 3 in a row. I'm not worried about the one with the Christmas tree, a star on it. It's the 3 in a row in front of the trees that we've just painted. And so I'm going to mix raw umber, so it's brown, and hooker's green. So when I mix the two together, I come up with sort of a grainy, sort of a brown and grainy green. So I'm not looking for a bright green color. I'm looking for more subdued. So that's hooker's green and raw umber mixed together. And I'm going to start just to paint those cone trees in that color. So they're very soft, very subtle. That's just mixing those two colors together.
Kathy, I don't have raw umber, I have burnt umber, so that's a little too dark, right?
It might not be. Try it and just add a little bit of water, should be okay. You're just looking for a really soft color, something more subdued that's not quite as green, more of a grainy look to it. Has that worked? And we'll paint all 3 of those trees in the same color. They're all part of the same tree family. If one's lighter, one's darker, if you pick up a different color from the tree next to it, don't worry, that's okay. And it should look different than the tree that's behind it. And believe it or not, we've made it to halftime. So the card for today says, and this is for everyone, it's safe to ask for help. People want to support me. It's safe to ask for help. People want to support me. I think sometimes there are times when I don't want to ask for help, where I think I have the right answer. But I know that there are so many different alternate ways to think about things that when I do ask for help, it usually turns out better than I thought. So it's safe to ask for help. People want to support me. As you know, when you don't allow other people to help you, you actually take away from them, because some people just really need to help other people. So allow them that opportunity. I just want to switch over to a different green altogether. It's called sap green. If you've got it, good. If you don't, then add a little bit of yellow to the green that you've been using. A little bit of yellow and a little bit of water. Sap green is a little bit different. This is hooker green, and this is sap green. So it's just a little bit different green. A little bit more on the evergreen side, but I'm not looking for this. I'm looking for a different color altogether from the other trees. So we play with color in this class. I hope this works for some of you to learn. Just play with colors and enjoy them.
Kathy, is it sap green with what kind of yellow did you use? The ochre or the yellow from the star?
If with this, I didn't put anything in my sap green. I'm leaving my sap green the way it is. That's the color that
okay.
it is.
All right, fine. I have sap green. Fine.
Okay.
Fine.
But if you didn't have sap green, if you add yellow, the same as from your start, right? That yellow, if I mix those two together, let's see if I come up with the sap green. Pretty close. Pretty close. I'm looking more for more of a sort of a olivey color. So if I add a little bit of ochre to that, I come up with pretty close. So sap green, I'm going to do my tree. Which tree am I doing? I'm going to do this tree above my cabin. And if as you're painting your tree changes shape, don't worry about it. That's okay. This is a bit of an abstract. It is a forest, not meant to be perfect. Coming down to the roof line. It's leaving that nice straight edge on the roof. And just filling that sap green tree in. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect. If there's lines in it, that's okay. If it ends up taller than what you printed, that's okay. And hi, Lorraine. Thanks for your coming in to say hi. One more different color of green. If I take my sap green and I water it down a lot. So I've got my sap green. I'm going to add water. I'm going to really thin it out. I want it to be fairly light. So you can see just by adding water, it gets even lighter, almost a celery color. So this big tree here, I'm going to paint in this lighter color. So just by adding water, I want to do this tree, just lots of water. And I want to leave that white, those white spots on the side of the other tree. Don't want to fill that in. But I'm going to take this tree all the way down to the ground, right down to the bottom. And just by going from side to side, I'm able to actually add the look of some of those boughs on the tree. And hopefully by now our cabin is dry. So let's go ahead and paint that little Christmas tree. So I'm going to add a little bit of blue, a little bit of cobalt blue. That's the blue that I've been using. That's the blue that I used on my blue spruce over here. So I'm going to take cobalt blue. And sap green. A little bit of extra water. Let's darken that blue a little bit. A little bit of extra water, and I'm going to mix them together. So that's cobalt blue and sap green or a lighter green. And that's what I'm going to use to paint my Christmas tree. Now, you don't have to mix all of those colors together if you just want to paint what colors you currently have, or you don't have colors that have names on them. In the beginning, I didn't either. So you don't have to have all the same names that I'm calling out. Just work with what you've got. I'm going to take that same green that I just mixed up, the blue and the sap green that is in that little tree with the star on top. And I'm going to use that same color with my brush. And I'm going to start to put some lines in the tree beside it. So because I'm painting fresh paint on top of dry paint, it's going to look darker. Even if it's a similar color, it will look darker. So I'm just putting a little bit of embellishment on that tree, just giving it a little bit of texture. And I'm going into raw umber or brown, whichever you have. So this is a brown color. I'm going to give my trees a little bit of a stem on some of them. So they've already have a pre-drawn stem. So there are 3 of them that have that little. And I also want, with the same color, to paint my windows of my cabin. So I'm painting the outside of the windows with the burnt umber. And I'm painting my door, burnt umber. And with my burnt umber, I'm also going to paint my roof line, my side of my roof line coming up to the peak and back down to that Christmas tree. I'm going to do my roof line along the side, right to the back. It overhangs my cottage, my cabin, and I'm also going to connect that, and it connects behind that tree at the outer edge. And staying with this same color, I'm going to work from left to right, just very lightly, not even a complete line, just a few markings in the snow underneath some of the trees, just to indicate this is where the snow starts or stops at the top, along the line of my cabin. And right off the page. So it doesn't have to be a completely solid line. It's just enough visually to indicate that that's where the snow and the trees meet. That's where the snow and the cabin stops. And this is where the snow is going to end on the far right-hand side underneath the cabin. Staying with this brown or raw umber, I'm going to do a little bit of earth beneath the trees where the stump is showing. Just a little line. May look funny right now, but once we start to put the snow in, it will adjust. So we've been working with cobalt blue. This is cobalt blue. Blue and or purple are beautiful colors for shadowing, for shading. So if I use purple, if you don't have blue and you can use purple, that looks pink, but it actually is purple. So if I take this blue and add a lot of water, it's going to give me the look of shadows. If I did the same with the purple, it will give me the look of shadows. So whichever color you decide to use is up to you. I'm going to use this cobalt blue. So this blue. And with water, I'm going to start to create the look of snow. And I'm not filling in all of it. I want some white to remain. So I'm going to start just to do some hills and valleys. Put the blue on, add some water, blend it a little bit, leave some white, touch a little bit on that brown so it starts to spread out a little bit, looks a little bit more earthy. Touch on that brown again with just a little bit of water, just to give it that earthy touch. Just leaving white, not trying to fill all of it in. But when I touch on that brown, it just gives a little bit of an earthy feel. And if it's not quite as visible as I want, I can add a little bit extra here and there. And the part of the trick of this is not to overwork it, just to do enough that it's visibly looks like the snow. And it will dry lighter than when you put it on, so not to think that you haven't put enough. And I'm going to do the same thing with that cobalt blue, this blue. I'm going to water it down, just adding water. And I'm going to whisk this into the sky. Still leaving white. Looks like there's a little bit of clouds, maybe a bit of a stormy sky coming. And I'm just popping it in here and there in between the trees. And if it looks like you're not seeing much of it, if it's too light, you can add a little bit darker color, but it is going to dry lighter than when you put it on. We're just looking for a wispy look in the sky. And you can use your paper towel and tap some off if you want to remove a little bit. Just use a damp paper towel. So we have a little bit of background behind a couple of trees, but before we do that, let's do this tree in the foreground. So I'm using ochre. and it's drawn in. So we're just going to paint with ochre over top of the lines that are there. So this tree is our sight line. We are looking at this whole scene from this vantage point. This is where we're standing. So we're going to add the tree right in front of us that we're looking at, like from this spot. So we've got distance in the background. And we've got our vantage point, our viewpoint. So right over top of that tree. And you can add as many branches as you like. It can be as thin or as full as you want it to be. Because this is kind of a twig tree, if you don't have a steady hand, this is a great project for you. These don't have to be straight in any way. So next I'm going to mix cobalt blue and a little bit of black together. So mixing the two together, coming up with a sort of a gray blue. So it's cobalt blue and black, or gray if you have gray. And from the edge of the picture, from behind this tree, I'm going to start to put in footprints. So these footprints are going to run just like a person would be walking or moving. There are footprints in the snow. That are going to come right up to my cabin door. And I'll use that same gray blue mix just to put a little bit on the windows. Just for the look of shadows in the window. And one more step with that blue, gray, or blue-black mix. I'm going to create the look of trees in the background, behind, in the corner of my picture. So I'm using that darker color. I'm just going to stop at the top, not all the way to the top of my picture, but I'm just going to give the look in the background of some depth, just in behind. It doesn't have to be perfect. It's just that look of trees behind. It's dried just enough that I can put a few little strokes. And I can do the same behind the back of the barn. Just a few strokes, looking like there's trees way in the distance. And what's left to do is to decide where are you going to put your artist's signature and what will it look like. And I'm just going to sign mine on the corner. And there's lots more we could do with this. We could spend all afternoon adding lines, changing, moving things around, adding more green to some of the trees, giving them a little bit extra, little bit of details, just dry brushing some green on there. That's up to you, but that's what you can do in 1 hour. So I hope you've enjoyed that. It's a lot of detail, but you did a marvelous job. Very nice.